this YouTube video, our group will be discussing Chapter 2, Writing in College and Beyond. To begin with, the chapter introduces the importance of writing due to it being fundamental to developing our own thoughts, to dig deeper within ourselves, to reflect. In college, it is crucial for us as students to practice our writing skills as well as critical thinking to showcase a good mind. Being able to gain the knowledge of the practice of reading and writing well gives us an essential need for success in our future paths. Now, to go into developing an effective writing process, the first important task, which may come off simple, but it's understanding the assignment of what the instructor is asking you to write, whether that may be a report or analysis. You need to understand precisely of what's being asked. In my high school years of English, I cannot stress enough how much I overcomplicated an assignment, completely at times overlooking what I should have done and what was being told of me to do. At times, my teachers would clearly get stressed of how many students would misinterpret the assignment due to not understanding the assignment. But a good thing was my teachers were always lenient and taught us what to look for when assigned writing prompts to help us in the future for college. But even in Chapter 2, it gives us the resources of direction words that are found in writing assignments such as analysis, categorize, and prove, exit, and their meanings to help us better understand what writing assignments will be looking for. But the chapter also encourages to check in with the constructor for any additional clarity, but that sums up the first important task of the writing process, understanding the assignment.
So, Chapter 2, Section 2 talks about basically kind of when we're given a written assignment sometime and we get the freedom to choose our own prompt, how to narrow down what to write about. It's not necessarily easier when we have a prompt because the prompt is the prompt is a certain thing, but what if we're not interested in it? Then that's when it makes it hard to write about, But when we're given something to write about, there are so many things that we could write about, talk about, whether it's our interests, all that stuff. So it talks about helping narrow down all those things, because sometimes it can be too broad, whether it's politics. I know it talked about advertising, and then it was just it just talked about specific essay topics that the topics that you can help help narrow them down. Oh my gosh. So I know that this chapter, it kind of helped me because in high school, when I was in my English class writing essays, I kind of did struggle with narrowing down topics for essays, or when we got to choose which prompt I wanted to talk about, because I would always whether it's if it was an argumentative, it was kind of hard for me to write about both sides, because I would write about my side, and then obviously you have to, in a paragraph, you have to write about why the other side is also valid and then prove that wrong. I would be oh wait, this other side is kind of valid. It's low-key valid. So that's kind of what stuck with me, is kind of narrowing down and knowing which one I can stick with and feel confident in. So that kind of helped me. This section did help me. Now we're going to talk about Section 3 of Chapter 2. So this section talks about the process of gathering ideas from writing. So I know last section we talked about how to narrow down which topic, and because sometimes when being asked to write about something without a prompt or without any idea, it's kind of hard to narrow down because it's too broad of a topic and a subject to talk about. So sometimes we can feel if we started at a blank page, we're unsure of where to start, especially if it's write something, or if a teacher would ask us, write in a paragraph how your day was. Do you start it off, for me, I'm an overthinker when it comes to that. So when we talk about our day, I would know where to start, the moment I woke up, what time, my morning, so that kind of, makes me hard to process and gather ideas. So it talked about techniques, keeping a journal. It also talked about observations and questions. I know some questions that I've read through this section of the chapter that kind of helped me I will definitely be using these in my next classes, or if I have to write an essay, where who was involved, what exactly was said, why did this argument happen, and how did it affect me later. This is like when asking questions. That's a method, for an argumentative essay. I think for me, a personal thing that I can add to this and make a personal connection to was if I was making a list, rather than like using full sentences and making a list, I can just brainstorm just little ideas, whether it's like grocery list, you have dairy section, milk, cheese, yogurt, or if I need like snack section, chips, or even a morning food. So that's the personal connection that I got from this chapter. Yeah.
Section 4 of Chapter 2 is about formulating a thesis. A thesis is part of the essay that is the main idea. It should contain the main important idea of your topic and should be focused and covered throughout the whole essay. A thesis statement is usually around 1 or 2 sentences long and is presented at the end of your first paragraph. A thesis should not be a question, but rather than a claim. A strategy for creating a thesis statement when struggling to create one could be starting with what I want to say, and then later on deleting the opening, which then leaves you with your thesis statement. For example, if I'm struggling to make a thesis and I start with what I want to say is that strawberries are super beneficial fruit due to their nutritional content and they have vitamins in them. After writing that, I will then remove the what I want to say part, which then leaves me with my thesis statement. To know whether your thesis is too general, you will end up being overwhelmed by the number of problems that you have to address. To know whether if your thesis is too specific, it will leave you with not enough information to address. A well thesis will let you prove information and with evidence and will allow for a argument to be made. Some questions that could be made to know if your thesis is solid is if your thesis is clear, is there enough evidence to support your claim, and if you're able to make a claim and present with enough evidence. Section 5 of Chapter 2 is about being able to support your thesis with evidence. There are different types of evidence that people use during their academic writing. Depending on what type of piece you are writing, you can either use surveys, examples of your own experiences, and use sources to help with the evidence to back up your claim. Researchers and writers use 2 types of sources, which are either a primary or secondary source. Primary sources are pieces of work that are close to a time, place, and culture. These primary sources include letters, speeches, interviews, diaries, treaties, and or maps. On the other hand, secondary sources are sources that restate or analyze primary sources. These type of secondary sources are books, articles, and documentaries. It is important that one writes using the most reliable source for a specific discipline. The evidence that is used in your essay should be high of value. The statistics and facts should be accurate and cited correctly as well. Your argument could have a better chance of succeeding if you choose the works of respective scholars and experts that would be recognizable to others familiar within the subject area.
Hello, this is section 6, determine organization. There's several organization patterns you might follow in drafting an essay. Most common being chronological order. This pattern often used in narrative storytelling and explains a process. Other forms are comparison and contrast essays, where they'll use more of a block pattern or a point organization pattern. And in a block pattern, a writer provides all the information about one subject, followed by a block of comparable information about the other subject. And in a pinpoint comparison, while on the other hand, the writer starts by comparing both subjects in terms of a particular point, then compares both on a second point. And after you choose an organization pattern, there being more than the ones I listed, jot down the main idea in your outline. And as you add more information and ideas to your scratch outline, your sketch, you may want to develop a more formal, detailed outline of your paper. And I would suggest you follow these rules. Number one, including the title of your essay, a statement of purpose, and the thesis statement. Number two, write in complete sentences unless your meaning is immediately clear from a phrase. Number three, if you divide any category, make sure there are at least two subcategories. The reason for this is simple. You cannot divide something into fewer than two parts. And number four, observe the traditional conventions of formal outlining. Notice how each new level of specificity is given a new letter or number designation.
Hello, I'm going to talk about writing your first draft. We sometimes like to write our draft without thoroughly checking it. To begin with, you should have outlined what it will look like. And you should be asking yourself if you're stating the ideas you want to write about. If you feel uneasy about your draft, you should spend time improving your paper. While writing, don't feel discouraged if you struggle to find the right words for your thoughts or if your ideas don't come together smoothly. Always keep your audience in mind, and rereading your first draft will help you develop your ideas and tie them together. Once you write your first draft, you will see you have something to build on and work with during the revision process. Later on, you'll be able to edit the content of your paper by adding details and explanations where necessary. After completing your first draft, you will need to revise it. To ensure that your writing expresses what you want it to, you should focus on the major concerns like your thesis, evidence, organization, and purpose. Make sure to not rewrite your second draft immediately because disorganized modifications will not improve your paper. Tackle your writing systematically, like making revisions on a hard copy of your paper. Read your paper aloud and listen for parts that don't make sense. And you could ask a fellow classmate to read your paper and critique it. Compare your earlier outline of your first draft to an outline of how your paper actually came out. This will help you see the organization and flow of your essay. Another method you can use to revise your work is starting with large-scale issues and then concentrating on the finer details. If you find yourself dissatisfied with your paper, like your paragraphs are not flowing smoothly, examine various transition words other writers use. Keep in mind that the text's readings are meant to serve as a guide for you while you write.
Hello, this is section 9, edit and proofread. And now that you have revised your essay, it is time to think about making it correct. And you can do that by asking yourself these simple questions. Do my verbs agree in number with their subject? Do my pronouns have clear antecedents? That is, do they clearly refer to specific nouns earlier in my sentences? Do I have any sentence fragments, comma splices, or run-on sentences? Have I made any unnecessary shifts in person, tense, or number? Have I used the comma properly in all instances? Have I checked for misspelling, mistakes in capitalization, and typos? Have I inadvertently confused words like there, they are, and there, or it's and it is? Have I followed the prescribed guidelines for formatting my manuscript? And now that you've checked, revised, and edited it, it is time to print. And before you print, I'd say to have one last check through, spell check, grammar check, through the entire thing for mistakes you might have missed. Run it through a software, and then after you print, make sure your paper's clean, legible, and it's properly spaced, and you have yourself your printed out final draft.
Lastly, Chapter 2 ends off with using a sample student's essay using the writing process. This essay is about Rebecca Silent's personal story when she was a student at Miami University, and where her instructor asked her to write an experience with biased language and how it affected her in the long run, in which this memory was about when she was in 3rd grade. She used a racist word towards a classmate, and because of this, it allowed her to grow as an individual to understand the impact of language. When using critical thinking about the student's essay, Silent's thesis is, "This is how I learned that language could be used as a dangerous tool. That's when I learned about prejudice and its effect on people. That's how it happened. This is how it affected my life. I believe she stated her thesis where she did to not only give context of what occurred, but the emotion put into the story to grab the audience's attention. It gives a build up to the readers instead of getting straight to the point. If in which if not doing so, it'll only lose feelings that are being put when telling this experience, so others wouldn't fully be able to grasp it nor feel it, not for her or for others involved in the story when engaging with this essay. Furthermore, Silent uses stories to construct her essays by using illustrations to convey a message being made, by making it appeal to the readers. She balances narrative with reflection by expressing what she gained from the experience, maintaining a balance between storytelling and what everyone felt that was involved. When it comes to Silent's assessment of the time she used derogatory language, I agree that she had every right to feel the way she did because using the word is wrong and harmful, and being able to have the whole realization of how impactful language can be and using harmful words can cause everlasting damage, especially it being connected to discrimination. Therefore, she does have every right to know what hurt she caused and be able to grow from it as an individual. Lastly, the way I would have ended the essay, if I was the one writing it, I would have done a call to action to end it with an impactful statement, bringing awareness to the impact of language. But this concludes Chapter 2, Writing in College and Beyond. Thank you for listening, and thank you to everyone in the group.